Amazon's famous for a culture of intense performance and cutting people who aren't making it. From your time at Amazon, I'm kind of curious, maybe you can give us the juicy details, like how many people are expected to be cut in Amazon typically?
What I can say, so I won't give an exact number, what I can say is that guidance, suppose it was 5 or 6%, for the organization. That number used to be a recommendation. It would be kind of a soft one. Hey, we need to manage out X% of folks over the course of a year. I think in the past couple of years, that has turned into a much more, it's turned from guidance to much more of a mandate. Yeah. I think coupled with the fact that up until recently, they weren't doing backfills for folks. There was this sort of like, hey, keep on running because this thing's chasing you, right, from the back. Yeah. I don't think that was necessarily healthy. Yeah. And, if I were to be quite honest, I consider myself a high performer. And so if you're a high performer, you don't have to think about that stuff. And, as much as I'd like to be empathetic about it, and, I've been around some of these decisions and meetings and stuff like that, if you're down, it's hard for me to speak about what it's actually like to feel like your job may be at stake, right? And so, I think a lot of what I would tell you is just kind of cold and numbers based, but there are real people here, right? If getting fired from a job is, that's a highly emotional, psychological thing, right? So I just want to make sure that I bring that up. Maybe I'll say this, and this is sort of how I guided other folks and other managers when they're asking me, hey, how do I think about this? The way to think about it is 5%, suppose that was the number, right? So that's 1 in 20 people, right? And so just take a population of 20 people, and I think there's a distribution there. And the people on the left-hand side of that distribution, in regular years where there are backfills, I think that they're not having a good time with Amazon's culture, right? They're not thriving, almost by definition, right? We're just going to say, hey, everything on the left-hand side is people aren't having a great time. And so I think it's almost a relief that there's a way to sort of like leave a situation like that. What's the alternative? They stay. And somebody that's not having a great time in Amazon's culture, which, it doesn't have a great reputation. Part of me is like, oh, that's kind of nice that, it's kind of a blessing in disguise, right? That we would move them out. Now, without backfills, that's where I start to get a little uncomfortable, because in basically any other year that they would be at Amazon, they would be totally fine. And I think even people, that are sort of left shifted, but in that main part of the distribution, I think they're great. And so that's where I start to go like, this is not something that I really agree with.
You're saying because it starts to cannibalize people who they're doing good, but now we're forced to stack rank people that were good.
So suppose you had a 6% amount of folks that were let go, and that was a hard thing. And so you did all of the very tough work to identify those folks and have them move out. And now you need to do 6% of those folks that remain. And then you need to do 6% of those folks that remain. And so it's not 18%, I can't do that math. Mm-hmm. But now we're starting to talk about people that are very close to the mid point. They're operating at a high level. And in any other year, they'd be totally fine. But now they're not. And so, I have colleagues that were let go recently, and it just kind of blows my mind that they would be let go. And so I think the most amount of impact will come from folks that, say, middle management, where, okay, well, there's 4 middle managers within the sub-org right here. The bottom 6%, like 6% doesn't even make sense when you're talking about 4 people or 8 people, right? And so I was very surprised by some of the people that were let go recently.
you were privy to some of the conversations where people are being discussed if they're getting managed out. What happens in those conversations? How does a high-level IC like you participate?
Yeah, you start getting pulled in when you're a senior engineer, and you definitely get pulled in when you're L7 or above. Those meetings are terrible, right? They're like 3 days long, and you're locked up in a room, and you're just sitting there talking about people, and you start to lose the humanity. You just start to think of them in terms of, the measurables, right? And the feedback from other folks. I won't go into the specific process, but what I will say is it's not a linear algorithm. I think in a perfect world, you would just go through everybody in the org, and then you would have equal amount of time to talk about them and their strengths and their weaknesses. Typically, you just talk about the edges. And that's not a reflection of, the people that are making the decisions and whether that's poor or not. It's the math. There are just too many people.
It sounds like across big tech, there's this increased intensity, and historically, Amazon has been the one that's always had this level of increased intensity, or at least this process of like, let's manage out the low performers quickly, and let's just factor that into our processes. Given that you've been in a lot of those performance conversations, do you have any advice for the people who are on the border?
If you meet expectations, if you solidly meet expectations, if everybody across the organization met expectations, I don't think you have a 5% stack ranking, like removing folks from the system, right? And so, I don't think that people that are, and I bristle a bit at the low performer label. I think of it as like the culture is not working out. There is a mismatch between me and the ambient environment at any particular company. I don't think it's a low performer. You know how hard it is to get an offer at Meta? Like, you are not a low performer.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be driven. There is a song and dance that you need to perform under pressure in front of somebody. Like, you go and take a leak code hard, and you have to go look at some, you have to code it in front of some SDE that's like got a bad expression on their face. Like, you are more than qualified. You're smart as hell. And now you're working at a company, and maybe you thought it was something different than what it actually was. What I would say is, I don't think these low performers, these so-called low performers, they should try to become high performers, right? I think by focusing on trying to be a high performer or focusing on trying to get to the next level, there's usually a reason why you're labeled that way. And so try to figure out what is that dimension that you're being judged and measured against that's holding you back from meeting expectations. So I think you need to crawl before you walk, before you run. What is that thing that they're judging you on? And then I think you should be real with your manager. And you should say, hey, I just wanted to check in. Am I meeting expectations? And if I'm not, then like let's do a preemptive plan, right? So PIP stands for Performance Improvement Plan. Can you do a pre-PIP? Can you proactively put together a plan to get you to a spot where you're going to be safe? That's what I would recommend. Just be proactive about growth to get back to the median.
Asking your manager for a proactive PIP is...
I would maybe not use those words.
That's hilarious. Okay, so it sounds like, obviously meet expectations, work with your manager.
Well, I don't think it's obvious. I actually, if you took a survey of software developers and you asked them, have you used these words with your manager? Suppose you're my manager.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, I just started here at Meta. I just wanted to get a sense of what your expectations of me. What are those, right? Have you explicitly asked about expectations with your manager? I think like 25% of people have actually done that. I think most people are trying to guess at what those expectations are. And so I think that would be my first bit of advice, is just like straight up ask what expectations are, and then ask if you're meeting them or not.
Right.
That would go so far.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think most people, all right, I don't know if it's being shy or what, but I feel like most ICs don't directly talk to their manager and say, I want this, or, you know, how do I meet expectations? How do I get promoted?
Obviously, there's going to be an answer.
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, Ryan, what's your expectation of me? And am I meeting it? It's like, no, Steve, you are not meeting expectations, and it's starting to become a problem. Even that is a better situation than not knowing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right. And so there's a mutual friend of ours, 𝗪𝗲𝗃𝗀𝘀 from Tero.
Yeah.
I stole this saying from him, and I don't know if he stole it from somebody else that worked at Meta, but it's basically like bad news that's delivered early is just news. Right. Bad
sense.
News that's delivered late is terrible news.
Yeah.
So so if you are asking about expectations and it's early in your career, it's early in cycle, and they're like, hey, this is a problem. Well, now you've surfaced the issue, and you have a fighting chance of actually addressing it. If you are like, hey, what's up with my expectations? Oh, it's really bad. And it's December, right? So the months preceding performance review,
It's over.
You're not in a good spot.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just encourage people to deliver, try to find as much bad news as early as possible.
Hey, thanks for watching that clip. If you thought it was interesting, it's from a longer conversation that's available right here, right now. And if you have any feedback for me, feel free to drop a comment on YouTube. I read every single comment that I get.